What is the difference between Somalia and Somaliland? This is an argument mainly between Somalis. I think it is important people understand when it comes to distinguishing the two, Somaliland and Somalia. So I am going to explain in details on why do Somalis claim to have two different countries, flags, two different celebration days. People from Somaliland have celebration day on May the 18th, and the people from Somalia have celebration day on 1st of July each year. Somalia and Somaliland is located in the northeastern of the African continent, generally known as the Horn of Africa. It shares border with Kenya to the southwest, Ethiopia and the Republic of Djibouti on the west. To the north and east, the Red Sea and the Indian Ocean, comprising 6,037 and 540 square kilometers in total. Together it has the longest coastline in Africa. Colonial rule on the Somali territory came as a result of the partition of the African continent by the European countries in a conference held in Berlin in 1884, historically known as the Scramble for Africa. The term was a figure of speech applied by historians to the period in which Africa was divided and then colonized by European powers in the late 19th and the early 20th century. Colonization for Somalis was also about divisions of boundaries, not only between them and the other African peoples, but also among Somalis themselves. Somali territory where territories were divided into 5 parts under different colonial rulers: British Somaliland, French Somaliland, Italian Somaliland, Somali Ethiopia, and the eastern province of Kenya, formerly known as the North Frontier District, NFD. The blue flag of Somalia has 5 stars representing each of these territories. The main objective of the Somali politicians period to and after independence was to unite what they perceived as a disjointed nations. Somaliland had became a British protectorate in 1879 and 1886, after Britain concluded a series of treaties with the Somali traditional leaders. Britain saw Somaliland as strategically important for their route to the Far East and India. After the opening of the Suez Canal in 1869, it was a supplier of a fresh meat to their occupying force in Aden, also known as Adan. When a British colonist ended in the country in 1960, they left a country that was one of their least developed colonies. Colonial rule on Somalia came about as a result of an idea of Italian Prime Minister Francesco Crispi, who came to power in 1887 and wanted some land in Africa for his country to help the Italian economy. During the first period of Italian colonization, Italian foreign policy in Africa was dominated by Crispi, who used his colonial policy to reinforce and consolidate his power and to get support from the southern Italian population who were demanding a reform. As soon as the Italian arrived in Somalia, they instituted a forced labor policy with a fascist and humiliating ratios. They seized a large banana plantation and very badly demoralized the Somali working force. Somaliland became a briefly independent state on June 26, 1960, and 5 days later, on July 1st, 1960, Somaliland united with their fellow Somalis of Somalia as planned, without a condition of agreement, to form the Somali Republic. Somali Republic, which has fairly lasted up until the Civil War in 1991, was actually born out of two Somali territories previously under the colonial rule of Britain and Italy. In 1988, the regime of the time committed massacre against the people of the Somaliland, which were among the events that led to the Somali Civil War. The war left the economy and military infrastructure severely damaged. After the collapse of Siad Barre's regime in 1991, the local government, led by the Somali National Movement (SNM), declared independence from the rest of the Somalia on May 18, 1991 of the same year. Since then, the territory has been governed by an administration that seeks self-determination as the Republic of Somaliland. However, Somaliland's self-proclaimed independence remains unrecognized by any country or international organizations. I believe it is realistic to say that Somaliland today is not based on clients. Somaliland welcomes all parties within Somaliland to be part of this moving to a democracy and secure and successful future. On the other hand, Somalia is rising again after 2 decades of civil war and unrest. Somalia will finally get a permanent constitution and government. After years of transitional institution, despite 2 decades of civil war, the Somali capital of Mogadishu is currently undergoing an economic restoration, with businesses and banking and even tourists making a comeback. I don't like the belief of a tribe myself. The tribes were formally created to maintain a track of family and for directions. As Almighty God teaches us in the Quran, O mankind, we created you from a single pair of male and female and made you into nations and tribes, that you might recognize one another, not that you might despise each other. Verily, the best among you in the sight of God is the most righteous of you. Surely Allah is all-knowing and all-aware. Now the tribal idea was manipulated by so-called Somali politicians, traditional leaders, religious groups, backed by and supported by the Somali public or Somali community as a large, who believe that these leaders are actually serving their interest. And it is now what is causing all these fighting divisions. We divide each other into tribes, clans. Each tribe, client assumes superior of themselves. We are one people. we should come together rather than separate. And it's up to the next generation of Somalis to bring us together